Hi guys, I'm pretty excited for this one. My copy of Oathbreakers just arrived, along with some skeletons.
Scruffy Crow.
I've already had a flick through the book. I've got some interesting bits that I want to look at on there. I also went in for a box of the skeletons. Now, I'm not going to be running any kind of undead army anytime soon, but I thought one unit of these guys to knock alongside my humans that I've got planned for the new year might be rather fun. So I'll be building a few of these up by the end of the video, which is why this video won't be out for a week from now. While I was putting an order in, I also picked up the last few dwarves that I wanted. They're out for the moment. So this is the Dwarf Champions kit. It gives me this pretty awesome general type character with the sort of Sutton Hoo style helmet. That'll fit in really well with my Conqueror dwarves. Really pleased with these sculpts. This guy is a bit more of a generic spearman, and when I sorted out my last EM4 order, I only counted 19 into this bag for this exact reason, because I knew this guy was on the way, and he'll make quite a cool little leader slash champion model for this unit. And as I've mentioned before, you look, even the helmets and everything, these guys scale perfectly in with these plastic models. And I probably won't end up using the shields that come with them for these dwarves. I'll do some drawing pin shields like I did to match them with the rest of the army. So I'll put these to one side and I'm sure they'll come in handy somewhere else. For instance, I still keep thinking this guy maybe needs a little shield. Because it was Halloween as well, North Star kindly threw in a little bag of sweets, which is cool. But unfortunately I didn't win any of the cool Halloween prizes. That were potentially up for grabs. Alright, before I get cutting on this sprue, let's have a look at what we've got here. So we got 30 skeletons on sprues of 5, and I believe all the sprues are identical, which is normally the case with North Star kits. And one thing that that's really impressed me is that, like, I've heard horror stories about the skeletons that Warlord Games, for instance, are currently selling, having separate feet and legs. And I always worry that skeletons are either going to look too chunky to be realistic or be too fiddly. I'm still kind of worried about these spears because I'm not a very careful person. But I'm going to put together a little banner bearer using this crossbar and we'll see how flimsy they are. I'm going to build these guys up as a unit of 20 with swords, which are down here, and shields, and I'll be doing one of them up using this sort of ancient looking helmet here, and as a champion, so I'll do a champion and a banner. This box comes with some of these sort of standard renderer bases, which I'll be using on my champions, but I won't be using on my skeletons. Instead, I'll be using some of the round bases, because I also want to make my whole army that I'm doing next year usable in Oathmark, as well as because I want to make my whole army that I'm doing next year usable in as many systems as possible, including Warlords of Erewhon and Saga. So I want to be using these round bases. But to make them work in Oathmark, I also picked up some of the matching trays here. So I went for some trays of 10. And as you can see, these bases fit perfectly into these little slots. I mean, that's what they were made for. And that'll make some nice, neat little ranks. And I'm really keen to try out this system because this is what I intend to use across the whole next army I use. And I'm really keen to try out this system because this is what I intend to use on my whole next army. So I want to make sure I'm happy with the way it works and the way it looks before I invest in absolutely loads of these. So I'm going to get building now, build up these skeletons and a couple of other little bits. And I'll have a good old read through the book so I can give you my thoughts on that. Okay, so my first 10 skeletons are almost built. and I'm still really impressed with this kit. I'll show you a bit more detail in a second though. What I have done is I've gone out to my garage, had dug around. I thought I had more Games Workshop skeleton bits than I actually turned out to have. But I found a few little bits and pieces, and some loose ones that I thought I'd just see how they matched up. And I'm going to use a couple of these on my champion. So first up we've got this sword. And if you just grab one of the new skeleton sprues, here are the swords available on there. This one is that little bit bigger, so it's a bit sillily big, but it kind of marks this guy as a champion. And you'll notice that the proportions of the arm and the hands and everything are very similar. I must admit there is probably a little bit more crispness in the Games Workshop one, but I think these match together quite well. With the shield is the same size. I know there is some that are like that, but this one is a bit of a different design, and it's only a tad bigger. They also come with the plain backs, so that will work with one of the arms from this kit. Whereas the arms from the Games Workshop kit, I've got a ball, and we've also got I've got a socket there and a socket there, so that's going to take a little bit of work to get that arm on. I also had a look at the sort of heads, and I think I'm going to use these as well. So this is a couple of the helmeted heads from the GW kit. And here's the helmeted heads from this kit. And yeah, I'm going to throw these two in for a little bit of variation. Because I think that's actually going to look pretty cool. And again, that's the GW one, that's the Oathmark one, and I think they're close enough that you'll not notice. So that's pretty cool to know. And the connections are basically the same, so just a flat bomb. So they'll connect on, I think, to the tops of these guys' spine without too much hassle. Alright, in order to get the Games Workshop part to connect to this new part as well, I think I've come up with a bit of a plan. I've got this spare bow arm here that I'm probably not going to use. I'm going to just chop off the end. And then I'm going to get a fairly liberal amount of glue in there. And a fairly liberal amount of glue in here. I'll just let everything sit for a little second. So we're down to just the ball off the end now. Oh, and there we have it. Oh, because we've used, some might say, too much glue, this whole thing's a bit goopy. But it also means the whole thing's blending together. Alright, that's my skeleton champion all done. So he'll either count as the unit leader or as a full-on champion. I think he looks suitably impressive, and he should stand out without breaking the sort of slightly more down-to-earth fantasy that these guys are kind of going for. I also went and grabbed this Frostgrave Wizard Sprue, and I've been having a little play around with this and a couple of little bits off the Cultist Sprue, and I came up with this fairly simple Necromancer. So I've got a little bone on there, got a little bundle of bits off the Cultist Sprue, including a skull, and then I used the skull off the skeleton, Oathmark skeleton sprue, and carved out what was on his staff before. Just inserted this in. It's going to take a little bit of work, but I think that looks cool. Probably pop a little bit of green stuff in there. And the head and the robe and everything were all off the Wizard Sprue. I think that's quite a cool little Necromancer that fits well with these guys. Stones behind them, raising them from the dead. Alright, all my skeletons have been built now, and these guys have gone together really, really nicely. I've been really impressed with this kit. I've done a couple of the head swaps with the GW one. I think that's worked quite nicely as well. And I've really enjoyed getting getting the poses right on these guys, trying to make them look kind of dynamic, like they've been realistic sort of poses and angles. Really enjoyed doing that. It's been a while since I put a multi-part plastic kit together, so I tend to prefer metal, but these guys have still got that old school charm while being a thoroughly modern and nice to put together kit. I was a little bit worried about the shoulder joints, but I think they've ended up nice and sturdy, because the torsos are all one piece. I think these guys are going to stay together really well. Oh, this is the GW, and this is the other GW head. I think, yeah, it's worked. What I've got here is I've got a couple of the GW skeletons. So if you've already got a bunch of these and you're wondering, yes, these guys work absolutely fine next to each other. They scale really well. As you can see, this guy's maybe a bit broader. But I think if you had these guys together in a horde, it wouldn't necessarily scream out to you which was which. I will say these guys have got a slightly finer detail to them, but these guys have got just a lot more options, and I think the poses on these guys are a lot nicer. Also, these guys also work out considerably cheaper, so there's no doubt in my mind if I had to pick up one box of these, it would be the Oathmark ones over the GW ones for sure. If I was starting a whole skeleton army from scratch, what I'd probably end up doing would be buying a couple of boxes of these, and then maybe a box of these just to spatter some of the bits around here and there, just for that little bit of extra flavour, because they've got some slightly more interesting shields and just a few other little interesting heads and stuff. So yeah, my review of Skeleton Infantry would be that there is definitely a very nice kit, very good price, fun to put together. So I'll definitely be painting these up soon, and that'll be a video later down the line at some point. My dwarves have had an undercoat as well, and they've all been based. So this guy just went on the base with a bit of fill around. These guys were sawn off their integral bases and added here. I wasn't entirely happy with this guy's pose, flat on the base, so I've just given him a little hero rock to stand up on. And when I was digging out the spare parts, I went and dug out a couple of the shields from the first batch, so they all match in with the rest of my army. So the book, I've been giving this a proper read through, and I just want to break down my thoughts on. The parts bit by bit. The first part of the book is the Undead army. And this is split within two pieces. We've got the Revenants. So you've got Revenant Kings, Princes, Generals, sort of captains, pretty much laid out like any of the other Oathmark armies, including a chariot. Now my thoughts for these guys is that they're all pretty much heavy armoured, and they've got the sort of unthinking and uncaring rules. And as I was reading through, I did think what would make a really good proxy, some models that I already own, are the old Chaos Warriors with the two weapons out front. There's no skin visible on those guys, so they could quite easily be Revenant suits of armour, led by a suitably sort of evil king. And that'd actually make quite a good little proxy army if I wanted to try out the Undead. The second part of the Undead list starts with the Necromancer, and then has skeletal champions, and then the rest of the skeletal units with some ghouls, sort of more of your standard Undead wraiths, and then there's some more exotic creatures at the end. So that's what obviously the rules I'll be using for these guys, a full unit of skeleton warriors with my Necromancer. One little thing is actually I was reading through this and I got to this beautiful bit of double page art, and I thought, oh wow, that Necromancer kind of looks like the one I built. That was potentially a subconscious choice by me, and potentially just, you know, the stereotypical image of a Necromancer. And it wasn't until I'd seen that and thought, oh, that, yeah, I've kind of made that match quite well. Skull on a stick, arm outraised, hood. That I then flipped to the back of the book and went, oh no, that is the cover art. So I accidentally made the Necromancer off the cover art without really realising. I did think after that, if you wanted to make it absolutely spot on, you could do more or less what I've done here. But also, there's a head on the cultist sprue. I was thinking this one that actually matches in even better. So you could quite easily make the guy for cover with a wizard sprue and a cultist sprue. The second section in the book is legendary heroes. This is very similar to the battle honours system in the previous expansion, Battlesworn, but applies to heroes rather than to whole units. And yeah, basically, if your hero survives enough battles, you can sort of start leveling him up, and then he can gain some interesting but not necessarily overpowered little extra traits, which only happen once per game on the most part, which is quite interesting, I think. Gives a extra little bit of character to your characters, so I'll definitely be using that in my games. The next section is some military expeditions. So these are, by the looks of them, I've not read them page to page, but the linked scenarios with interesting outcomes. And there's a couple of those in there, and a couple of other little scenarios and things, which is quite nice, and give us something to play through at some point. The last section is these new and unique territories. Now, out of the whole book, this only makes up the last few pages, but I'm not as impressed with this. So these are extra territories that you'd add onto your army to give you a little bonus, rather than unlocking units like most of the territories do. These give you a tiny little bonus, but pretty much all of these bonuses are small enough that it makes no real difference, I don't think, or sort of so specific that it's rarely likely to make that much difference, I think. I said, once again, could be interesting, adds that bit of extra flavour, but honestly I think they're mostly just going to get forgotten about in most cases. But it's an interesting idea. The last section of the book, the very last section actually, refers to just your special abilities and the new undead rules, which is undead, uncaring and unthinking. And then you get sort of standard sort of undead things of not caring about morale tests, or at least caring differently. And yeah, they're less prone to bow fire and they're harder to activate. So that's the sort of basic, that's your basic mechanics for the undead units. We've got some Necromancer spells. And yeah, so all in all, this is a really interesting supplement. I said it definitely fleshes out the undead quite well, gives you quite a good few options, and then adds the extra sort of bits of story and flavour as well. I'm actually a lot more impressed with this one than I was the previous supplement, just because I think it adds a lot more to the game, and is a lot more interesting. So I'm really happy with this this haul, as it were, and I'm really happy with the way that Oathmark is going. It's not my favourite way to release a game in these sort of supplement sort of systems. I'd rather have one big fat rule book, but I'm happy to keep buying these as long as they have the sort of value that they've got here, and hopefully I can work a lot of these extra rules into our games. So let me know down in the comments if you've picked up either of these and what you thought. Let me know what you think to the skeletons. I would say, in my eyes, they're the best on the market right now. And who out there is currently enjoying Oathmark? And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.